Welcome to Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom podcast. My name is Mompoloki Lerumo Mogobe. Our objective is to enthuse, inspire, energize, and empower entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs of all stripes here in BW and beyond. We do so by inviting these entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs into our makeshift studio. Sometimes we call them to the restaurant, sometimes we go to our studio, and we ask them to share their experiential knowledge, their experiences and their expertise, and we ask them as many questions as we can, aimed at empowering you also as a viewer. Hello dear viewer, dear listener, my name is Mompoloki Lerumo Mogobe. Thank you so much for taking the time out to watch our show, Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom podcast. We always want to impact you positively in terms of giving you cutting edge information here in BW and beyond. And my guest is an entrepreneur of note. He'll introduce himself in greater detail. Mr. Mpulubusi, would you care to look at the camera and tell them who you are and share a little bit of your background?
Thank you, sir. Good day, listener, wherever you may be, at work, on the road. My name is Kereemang, popularly known as Alja Mpulubusi. I run a construction business, which I started many years ago, about 16 to 20, at different levels. Currently, I'm managing director at Pipework Services, where we largely deal with mechanical services installations, which include air conditioning, boilers, pump stations, water infrastructure works, and a lot of other stuff like building automation. You can visit us at our website if you want to see more of what we do. That's more or less who I am.
That's a very rich background. And in terms of academic training, that you can look at me for that one. In terms of academic training, what is your degree on?
I completed a degree in mechanical engineering at the University of Botswana when it graduated from being the Botswana Polytechnic in 2001, and immediately joined the employment industry.
Okay. You've been in business now you're in your second decade, and we're going to talk about how to enhance the prospects of success, or put it negatively, how to avoid failure in business, how to make sure that you improve the prospects of your business succeeding, using obviously Pipework Services and your other businesses as an example. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Now, why is that subject important? Why do you want to talk about that?
It is probably one of the key issues that I have personally encountered, which, if you were to put me in court, I would say to you, if you are not careful, there are certain aspects or choices that you make which can guarantee you failure. And therefore, there are those things that you should avoid by all means and at all costs.
And as a starting point, you say we must select a business which is along your area of passion, your area that you're excited about. Let me just word it the way you want. Select a business along your line of passion and expertise. Avoid going into a business because there's a lot of money involved in it. Just unpack that for us so that we understand what is the main message you want to put across there.
All right. You see, the biggest challenge with entrepreneurship nowadays is that whether it is due to the times we are living in or the general mindset of the people today, there is a general lean towards where people see a lot of money exchanging hands. And that tends to drive people's decision-making processes. Instead of them looking inside and seeing what they would love to do every single day when they wake up. I always give an example of football players. They don't start their professional football as professional footballers. They start as ordinary footballers in a dusty playing field, and they graduate from there to a third division team, to a second division team, and eventually you see them in the Premier Leagues on the big screens. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen that way all the time in business. People don't do what they grew up loving to do. And maybe because of circumstances, you find that when you graduate from high school especially, you've got this array of choices of subjects that you can do. And usually people are driven by either intellect or the lack of it into some kind of course.
Or the lack of it.
One of the two, because sometimes I want to be an engineer. Now I need to have a B in mathematics, an A in this subject, and I only have a D in that one. So eventually I'm told, no, you can only do accounting, let's say, and I'm not saying there is much wrong with accounting. I'm just giving an example. That tends to drive you away from your real passion. You want to be a vet, for example, you end up doing mechanical engineering. And at the end of the day, your choices start being limited by that for a start, and how you see yourself making money quicker if you are an entrepreneur. So people tend to take the latter route. They look for where they can make money quicker. At the moment, construction, for example, is the place to be. You find accountants, chemists, and all sorts of people are into construction. They don't have the passion for construction. They wouldn't spend the day in the sun laying bricks,
wearing makarapa,
and like we do. Unfortunately, the rate of failure in businesses that are started that way tends to be tremendously high, because when the money doesn't come, what do you do?
And using yourself as an example, this next point is that you say you must select your partners with care. Can you tie it to your personal experience and then help the listener understand why that is crucial?
Your partner in a business is actually a life partner, because the intention is for that business to outlive your mortal life. It must outgrow where you are standing. Now, you are only going to do that with a man or a woman of exactly the same spirit and exactly the same business values as you do. What tends to happen is sometimes when we are looking for a business partner, you find yourself with a great business opportunity, and then you start thinking, how do I get this off the ground? Then you sort of meet Mogobe one day, and he says, yeah, I could help you with money. And he says, okay, but you'd have to give me 51% of your company, right? He's a business person, yes, but the question is, are you compatible? When push comes to a shove, are you all going to be able to pull together? When things are hard, or when you have differences, are you going to be able to resolve them with the full trust that this man means well for our business? Some partners will come in because they think it will work. When it doesn't, they are going to start throwing all sorts of accusations at you because you started the business.
I know they all of a sudden call it your business now.
Yeah, now it's your
no
business.
longer our business.
You see. And some partners, you will start the journey, and halfway through the journey, he's going to be thinking, you know what, I think I could do something else. And suddenly you find yourself alone, right? So when you pick this partner, it must be somebody that you know and trust, and you know their value system enough to say we can go from here to there and beyond. And this is somebody that you know, generally you should know fairly well.
Yeah, I want you to tie it with your personal example without really mentioning names,
Yes.
but just to tell me how you dealt with it. Have you had a bad experience with a partner, and how did you deal with it?
Yes, I actually have had twice in two instances. The first time was when we started a company as a young lot of young men in the early 2000s. Four of us, we started the business, and it is still running now, and it's only left with two. Because you start a business, you start contributing your salaries to pay the employee and things like that, and the other guy eventually thinks, you know what, I can't keep up with this. But the challenge is when you budget to employ the people to rent the little office space, you are banking on the four of you. Suddenly there is three of you, and then there is two of you, and now there comes real failure. You actually keep walking into it with your eyes open. So you need people who can actually hang in there with you and trust that what you started will
It's going to
actually work out. Yes. The second instance is when we acquired a running business with a partner, and this was a business that had its problems. And we knew, when you look at this business, you are looking at a serious grind of 6 to 8 years.
6 to 8.
Yes, to actually realize value out of it. And the question
In
was,
other words, to get to profitability.
to get to profitability, right? But you now have two options. Do you start a small one and raise it up in 8 years to reach profitability? Or do you take this one and grind away for 8 years, right? The vote was, okay, let's take this one. It may not be
You're
a good
talking
vote.
about pipework services, right?
Yes. But now, come to think of it, a year and a bit down the line, the other guy says, listen, chaps, I think you should let me sell my shares,
Okay, what could you have done better in selecting a partner that you didn't do that resulted in this situation arising?
I think for the first time, I actually went for somebody that I didn't know that well. I think that was my fundamental mistake.
You thought you knew, but you didn't quite know.
Yes, I didn't quite know. To be honest, I knew him professionally because I had, to a degree, mentored him. But beyond that, I didn't really know his background.
What
And
I
it is
found,
more
I've had many partnerships that failed as well, like you. But what I found is that sometimes we confuse friendship for partnership, for business partnership. So when we get along as friends and we talk about similar things or have the same tastes, we assume somehow that we can do business together. Has that been your experience?
I think that's pretty much it, yeah. Although in my case, it was more confusing mentorship for partnership. Because it was my thought on the whole arrangement was somehow a business needs to have a lineage, if you want to call it that, or a succession plan. And I was thinking along those lines to say, okay, fine, who do you trust that in, say, 10, 15 years when your energy starts to fail you, can actually take the baton and continue.
I think
the
you had the
journey.
right idea, but just you didn't
Yes.
have the right person.
I just didn't pick the right person.
Let's take our conversation further. Picking a time around market upswing. Picking a time around market upswing, that's a tough one. Can you explain what it means and then how you actually execute on that?
It's actually a tough one for two reasons, right? It requires more intuition than real judgment, because you could judge a time to say the market is going to swing up now, and then it doesn't. But you must try the best you can to ensure that when you start a specific business, the market for that business is at least either stable or picking up. Because when the market is stable, you can probably pick a customer or two from the existing marketplace. When it's swinging up, you've got higher demand in a market that was probably only catering for who it was catering for. You take a construction company like ours, for example, and you start one now. The question is it the best time to actually invest in a construction company now? And the reason why it is tougher for some people and less for others is that if it's somebody with enough financial resources, for example, to say, I'm gonna ride through the storm until it weathers. By then, I expect that there will be a lot of casualties, and then I'll pick up the spoils. You could do that. But when you are hoping to hit the ground and start having cash flow, it actually becomes an issue for you if the market is actually already down.
Here's a question. How do you determine a market upswing? What are the signs or symptoms of a market upswing that you can take advantage of?
The primary sign of market upswing is simple demand, right? Generally in Botswana, we tend to sort of like benchmark or to use the government yardstick, because the government is the biggest consumer of just about every service. Now, take, for example, the current COVID situation where the government is putting a lot of money on health and, health-related PPE and products. This is probably a perfect time for a young chemical engineer or somebody like that to start a sanitizer company, for example. You are at the absolute peak of the demand. So whatever happens in the future could actually find you established.
That's a very good
That's
example.
probably the best example you can pick up on in the current scenario.
Do some number crunching. Forecasts can be powerful tools to peep into the future. Do some number crunching. Give a couple of metrics or numbers that guide you and how to crunch them.
I have two examples of projects that actually failed, where, and I tell you I'm an engineer, but generally I like to look at numbers. And in these two instances, I told the people who were starting the business, that's likely to fail. The first time they were starting a restaurant, and a few friends put their heads together and, believe me, put about 2 million pula together and say, we're going to start a business. So I said to them, guys, what's your cash flow forecast? Can I have a look and see if it's actually going to work? And they said, no, we are expecting to sell, a plate of food for 60, this much a plate, and we're expecting 200 patrons and stuff. And I said to them, are you being realistic? Do you realize that your forecasts are actually not pessimistic enough to guarantee that even if only 50 people come, you will still succeed? Because 200 patrons for a restaurant in a day, where there are about 20
What you're
restaurants.
talking about is called a margin of safety.
Yes.
You're asking about a margin of safety.
Yes. But not only that, but also your cash flow projections. To say, if we start this business, is our cash flow enough to keep the business running on its own? Because what then happened was, whatever they were forecasting didn't work. So instead of 200, yes, they were getting 200 patrons, but those patrons could only pay for an average meal of about 30 or 40 pula, right? That's like 25 pula out out of your safety margin. And I had said to them, look at your customer pool. It will not afford 60 pula per meal, not on a daily basis at least. The other one was when a pair of young men approached us and said they wanted to...
As Pipework Services?
No, at a personal level, to say they wanted to run. We do a little bit of mentorship with my partner. When young people want to start some kind of business, we try and help.
We do a lot of that.
Yes, we try and help the best way we can. And they went in, they looked at the business, they wanted to run a restaurant and a bar again. And what I said to them the first time was, why was it shut down?
In other words, they wanted to reopen an existing...
To reopen, yes. I said to them, why was it shut down? They said, no, the owner wants to go to Australia. I said, no, look for the real reason, right? Because I doubt at the amount the owner is looking for, I doubt if...
In other words, the owner had given a very glossy picture.
Of course.
About the business.
Right? Yes.
And then asked for a big price.
And then asked for a big price. It's not even a purchase, it was a rental, right? And I was saying to them, for you to raise...
They're basically buying just the equipment and the goodwill.
Yes, that's all.
Yeah.
Right? And the amount they were saying, I was saying to them, and I actually put it together in a spreadsheet for them. I said to them, you see, this here is what you could probably, at very best, turn over in a good month-end weekend. Now, let's just project it to 1 month, right? And see if you are going to make it. And I ran it for them for 6 months. I said, you see, you actually headed for failure within 6 months. And they said, no, it's not going to fail like that. I said to them.
They did not believe your numbers?
No. I said to them, numbers don't lie. There's a very, very funny video actually of people arguing over mathematics. I can't recall if it's 4 times 5 or something. Some people were coming with 214, some were coming up with some funny number. And you know, the funny thing about that is every one of them had a method of getting to that number. Whether it was by addition, by division, or multiplication, they were getting to their answer. So I said to them, you see, you can do anything you want with numbers. The question is, how real are you with the numbers you are dealing with? How objective are you? Because you have a passion of running a business. The chances are you are not being objective enough.
There's something I want to ask you as a successful businessman. People have talked about stress testing numbers. What do you know about that exercise, and how do you stress test numbers to test if they will survive in the actual real life without actually going all the way?
Yeah, I couldn't give you a straight answer because I haven't met the phrase in the way that you are putting it, but I would presume it's actually ensuring that your business can survive the harshest of conditions.
Yes.
Right? And this is why I always use the word pessimistic. I use pessimistic because when I do forecasts, I use the most pessimistic outlook of the market. So maybe that's what they mean by stress testing in more business language. And the only way to ensure a business will succeed would be to stress test it, to give it the worst possible scenario. And if it doesn't survive it, the chances are it won't survive for very long.
Okay. Obviously, I would have to talk about your personal situation here and ask you, in the context of Pipework Services, moving it from an ordinary business to a multi-million enterprise that it is today. What were the key indicators when we talk of stress testing numbers? What was the key thing that you said, now we are doing okay in terms of stability and looking forward as a successful enterprise?
Okay. Pipework Services would not be a perfect example for the simple reason that it is recently acquired and was already quite a large company in its own right. And at the moment, with the market downturn and stuff like that, it's actually going through your stress test. as such.
Because of COVID, right?
Largely because of COVID, yeah, but also because the government's expenditure on infrastructure projects, especially buildings, has got its cycles. And at the moment, it's actually at its lowest. And this is more or less where, if I was starting a construction company, personally, I would probably wait another year to see how things improve. So it is a very old company and was started very small. It's actually older than my whole professional life, at about 33 years old. And we have only owned it with my partners for about 6 now.
6 years?
Yes. So in the sense of growing,
it was doing well before COVID came and changed the dynamics.
Yes. Before COVID changed the dynamics, we were actually quite happy with our market, with our workforce, with the market. But obviously, certain decisions are being forced onto probably not just us, but other companies as well, to make adjustments to ensure survivability well beyond COVID, because my view on COVID is that its impact is not really here yet. I'm going to bet that the real impact will hit us in about 6 months from today.
Okay.
Then its real impact will start to really show, because at the moment it's all cushioned.
Building trust in your value chain. How would you go about doing that? Because you say that's a very important aspect of enhancing your chances of success. Building trust in the value chain.
When you take especially a situation like now, where post-lockdown, you got back to the office and some people had just decided their businesses are not worth running. And those people were due to pay you some money. And you were due to pay somebody with that money.
Starting with your employees.
Yes, starting with your employees. Now, the trouble with value chains is they are so interlinked. When one section of them starts to wobble, basically the whole chain starts to wobble, because everybody depends on money in the other guy's hands. Now, when you hit a place where somebody is not paying you, you need the next guy to trust you enough to say, if he says he hasn't been paid and he's making a plan for me, he's doing that without questioning you beyond your words.
In other words, your integrity has to be intact.
It must be absolutely solid, because if your integrity is not solid enough, people don't take your word as truth. They take your words and then they test them. So when you say, I haven't been paid, he picks up the phone and he phones the guy you say owes you to find out if they really owe you. And what happens is, some may even stop supplying you when you don't pay them. We have a very interesting example in South Africa of a company that we can phone and say, listen, we don't have money now, but we still need about 2 million rands worth of pipe work. Can we have it tomorrow? And this man will load all that piping up and deliver it where we need it delivered. And trust that the money we owe him and the money we are ordering for will reach him in due course. If that trust doesn't exist, where do you get that piping to continue making money, because the other sources have dried?
So the question then arises, how do you build trust down the value chain? Exactly. How, in a mechanical sense, what do you have to do?
Trust is built with actions, right? Over time, you have to put your words, your money where your mouth is. Or I don't know if I'm putting it right.
Yes, I understand what you're saying.
So people must trust what you say. because it's really as simple as that. If when you have money, you don't pay people, when you don't have it, they will not know that you don't have it. They will just treat both scenarios as the same. So over time, you have to build that trust at individual level, because usually we say value chain, but we're actually talking human beings who interact at a personal level and have to make decisions at that level, whether or not to trust each other. Now, if I trust you and the next guy trusts you and the next guy trusts you, then we have a very reliable value chain which will probably withstand
the test of time.
And within that value chain, we know if it's stuck somewhere, it's still coming. You know, some people will not pay you because they know they are liquidating the company. But if you have a value chain that you want to outlive even your time within the chain, if you're going to shut a company down, for example, I always say to people, pay all your creditors and tell them I'm shutting the company down
first before you shut it down.
I have a very pleasant example of when I was still employed by a company called Ken's Botswana.
I know them, they're big.
Yes, they are quite big, and they set up in Botswana. They shut down in 2005.
I hope they didn't move to Dubai. A lot of companies that shut down in the last 10 to 20 years moved to Dubai.
They already had a footprint there. But what they did was they set up a building services company here, because there was a massive demand for building services when the government was building all these hospitals that are running now. Scottish Livingston, Maung, I think Mahalape, Khansi, all these. So a lot of companies came in, and Cairns also joined them. In fact, they came to build a Princess Marina. Now, in 2004, they made a fundamental mistake of underpricing about 3 or 4 hospitals. And in the same year, the government devalued the pula.
I remember there was a huge devaluation.
That's right. That devaluation actually meant... Yes, that one. Actually, that's the devaluation that forced Cairns out of the country.
It was drastic, almost 70,
massive.
30 or 40%.
Yeah,
it was huge.
It was huge. I mean, I remember.
I think the pula was worth
160 almost.
160 or 170, and then
thereabout.
The next day it was the same as the
It was 114. Yeah,
yeah,
it was
yeah.
114.
Yeah,
so
it was.
You can imagine losing.
I was one of the people who were crying at the time. Yes.
They didn't just cry.
Yeah.
They decided that, listen, it's time to ship out. But what they did, which wasn't nice, was that they shipped out with the government's money. But what they did for their employees, I've not seen any other company do before. Because they even paid gratuities for people who were, you only got paid after 5 years. Anybody who has 3.5 years up to 5 years.
The law has changed now.
Yeah, the law has changed. Now you pay per month. If you want.
Effectively, yeah.
But what they did was they paid everybody their salaries, their 13th check, their leave pay, their gratuities. Even if you were 3.5 years, they paid you for 5 years. Right? And we all went on holiday.
Indefinite holiday.
Indefinite. We only heard from our cattle post that the company has shut down. But the only truthful thing they did was they paid their employees what was due. Obviously, they couldn't do it everybody, but that's the sort of gesture that people want to be able to remember you by. And that's why I believe it must be done that way.
This is a tough one now. Accepting failure, accepting that failure is part of the process, and being prepared to fail again and again and again. This one you have to spend a bit of time on, because I believe that the greatest reason why a lot of entrepreneurs fail is that they have no capacity. They have no fortitude, what I call testicular fortitude, to absorb failure.
Yes. And I don't know if this is something that is hardwired generally into maybe us young Botswana. I wouldn't want to attribute it to older Botswana who have seen much more difficulty. But the way we grow up in success. And that testicular strength, fortitude, is not built in us, such that failure is not abnormal. When you go into the net and you look at business success rates and stuff like that, I mean, in America, they are talking something in the region of 5% success for every startup. Now, somewhere in your mind, you must build in that mechanism to say, of the 100 companies that are being started today, including mine, 95 are likely to fail. Now, am I going to let myself fail and give up? Or when I fail, I will get up and try again?
And already statistics are against you.
Exactly. The odds are heavily stacked against you, but you've chosen to try anyway. So prime yourself up for getting up again. Because if you can't get up again, I've seen men who have lost everything. One gentleman where I grew up actually got his shopping center, which he had built while I was growing up. It got sold out in around the year 2000.
In an auction or something.
Yes. It got attached by the sheriffs. They took it from him. They rented his house and everything. And I mean, I wouldn't like to be in that position. But this man, without education, had built this shopping mall and all his estate. And what he did, he picked up his suitcase and he walked away. He walked to the nearest village and he went there and built another small shop. And he started operating from there. He used to walk to his shop and back home. Now he's got his whole shopping complex back and his house.
The same one that was sold?
Yes.
He bought it back?
Because they attached the rentals and everything. So they rented it out for a certain period and then gave it back to him when they had their money. Now he got that back and he still got his little shop in the other village. And he's still there. Now this is the sort of fortitude that maybe is missing in a lot of us. But maybe again because our primary focus is not to do something successfully, but to make money out of it. So it tends
which is not necessarily the same thing.
Which is not the same thing. A lot of people, when they started businesses, they started them because they felt they could add value to that marketplace. Mostly when we start businesses now, we start them because we can extract value out of it. And so our propensity for pushing and pushing and pushing is quite limited by the simple fact that if I don't get anything out of it, why am I here?
There's something I say to the young ones. It's from the Bible, the book of Proverbs. It says, a wicked man falls to his destruction.
Exactly.
But the righteous man rises 7 times.
Exactly.
Yeah, and keeps rising.
And he just keeps rising.
So you're wicked if you give up.
Yes.
From what?
Actually, giving up is a simple sign that you never meant to succeed in the first place. You had other motives, and this is why probably the Bible calls it wicked. Because if you have an additional motive beyond what we are seeing, it makes you wicked. And generally because we don't see it, when you fail, we may even pity you. Jeez, he could have done so much better. In the meantime, we shouldn't, because you never meant to actually be of service.
And who's to say after 1 or 2, 3, 4, 5 attempts, you won't hit it big again?
That's the question. The great example is men who drill boreholes in their plowing fields, right? One will drill 3, 4, 5 blanks in the same field. And then with 5 different borehole sighting specialists.
Experts, yeah.
Yes. And then one will come to him and say, you know what? You should have drilled just a few more meters into this one. And you know what the challenge is? It's actually believing this guy and putting more money there. It's not even drilling. It's actually you convincing yourself that should I rise up again here? And many times people have done that and struck massive amounts of water.
Yeah.
So the challenge of rising up every time you fail is not something that many have experienced. I wouldn't say personally that I have experienced falling that many times, but it is something that I have witnessed happening with men falling and falling big.
There's a story called Acres of Diamonds.
That's right.
I can't remember somebody can Google it. Acres of Diamond is really a story of persistence.
Yes.
It covers some of the things you've said.
That's right.
So I'm not going to share it now, but
I will look it up myself,
yes.
actually.
Now you say you have to recruit. That in terms of employing other people and growing your enterprise, you have to recruit with your vision in mind. Can you explain that process? How do you recruit with your vision in mind?
Yeah, the critical importance of recruiting with your vision in mind is that just like a breeding farmer, you want a homogeneous kind of mindset in your company where people pull together naturally, not out of effort. And if people tend to be of different mindsets, especially about the business, you always tend to have conflict, even where it's unnecessary. So the idea of homogeneity is just towards the company to ensure the common interest for the company is there.
I understand. I love that.
Yes.
All right. Your partners should enter at the right level in order to cope with the business demands. Enter at the right level in order to cope with the business what the business demands. Help me process that one.
Okay, you see, the challenge with business is when you look at it from outside, it may look the same. You know, he runs a property company, he runs a law firm, he runs a construction company. But within that market, there's actually tiers where people enter. You take a large construction company, for example, that's in South Africa. They could come in here and start tendering for building dams and large infrastructure work. But when you start your company, you must look at your capacity. First of all, your internal capacity. What is your capability of taking the stresses of the business?
As the leader of that business.
As the leader of that team, at a certain level. For example, if you are going to run a 40-50 million pula per annum operation, are you able to lead a team that size? For a start, are you able to lead a team that diverse? Because if you can't, you are going to fail, not because the business or the market is bad, but simply because that business is entering at that level in autopilot. But when you enter at the level where you are able to lead, where you are able to cope psychologically and financially, you find that your chances of succeeding are quite high.
I understand what you're saying.
Yes.
Your partners should represent different viewpoints. Debate equals decision making. I like this one because I always say we should encourage robust exchanges and robust debates.
Yes.
And I always encourage my partners to come with different viewpoints. And I want to hear your take on this one.
The challenge with, say, for example, two of us running a company is that if we always see it from the same viewpoint, there's a very serious likelihood that there's a big opportunity cost running past us all the time. I always liken it to the three blind men who were told to go and describe an elephant. One thought it was a wall, one thought it was a big pole, and one thought it was something else.
But snake.
A snake, yes,
the
holding
tail.
the trunk. Yes, you are right.
The tail even.
But you realize that between their three viewpoints, if you put them together, they were able to describe an elephant. Individually, they were talking completely different things. So sometimes when I see an opportunity in the market, I may miss the risk because I'm seeing
the bigger picture.
Yes, because when I look at that picture, a small detail has eluded me. My partner should be able to not believe just in what I'm saying, but question it to the degree that if there is a flaw in my reasoning, we should be able to pick it up and polish it up nicely and come up. Sometimes you may find that I actually made such a mistake that we should not go that route. Then I should also be in a position to say, you know what, he's right. Maybe we should just abandon this idea. I used to have a partner who used to like emphasizing that nobody has a monopoly of wisdom. Of wisdom, yes. This is actually also Mr. Barack Obama's general policy, that we should debate healthily and then come up with a quality decision.
Unlike the outgoing president.
More or less. But when you are the chosen one, you are allowed to make decisions alone.
Well, the less we say about that, the better. You accept the grind is real. Be prepared to put the extra hours required. The grind really means accepting that your work is your play. Your vocation is your vacation.
Yes.
That's what I believe. But I want to hear your take.
You see, especially when a business is starting, right, it has many difficulties. First of all, you may not be able to employ anyone to start it. So you start it yourself. And I know a friend of mine who wakes up at 4 in the morning, does his accounts, his invoicing and stuff like that, finishes that off, grabs a shower, and goes and works in the field all day. Comes back in the evening and answers his emails, right? Now, that's because he can only do that alone. He can't afford to employ anybody just now.
Or maybe he's limited his thinking to think he can't afford.
Could be. But remember, you actually have to earn the money to pay someone. Now, while you are, say, for example, I pick up a...
Because I would say to your friend that if he spent time in the field with someone doing those accounts, they will be getting done the whole day. There's more capacity, unlike him just limiting himself. Although he may have to sacrifice the first month and not take a salary.
Yes.
After 2, 3, 4 months, 5 months, surely it will turn around. Whereas if he keeps doing it himself, the turnaround period is going to take longer.
It does take longer, yes. But again, I was actually looking at a small business starting up.
Okay.
In our case, for example, we have an accountant who does the accounts for us. We are engineers. We don't really know accounting and stuff like that. But in his case, he's finding himself in a situation where he could do that, but maybe, like you are saying, his mindset says to him, do it this way, it's safer. Because you can work hard, but you'll still get there one day, right? But the real grind I'm talking about is that, in my case, for example, when I was starting up, because I actually, the one I started up with 4 young men is still running, although I handed it over to somebody else to run. When I started it, the other guys, after they left, the one guy was still up north working on a project. So that business was run at night. So I would go to work, and I was quite loyal to my employer. I did my employer's work at work. I didn't do my business in his offices. But when I finished at work, I would go home now and actually work on this one. And I did that for about 4 years until it probably could have taken 2 years if I had put every effort on it. But once I felt it was safe for somebody to run consistently, I then recruited my partner to say, listen, this thing is starting to generate a bit of money. So maybe you should live where you are and run it. And I was looking at our incomes to say his income, the company can afford. Now he can come and grind away and grow it. And, you know, it's grown from about maybe 600, 700,000 a year to just over 10 or 12 now.
12 million a year.
Yes, a year. Which for him and the small team he runs and for what it does is actually on this market fairly sizable.
So that's a good example. That's
a
good example.
So that was sort of the grind I was talking about, that sometimes it needs you to work at night. Like you are saying, your work is also your vacation. So when and over the holidays, when people go for Christmas, I used to actually now go into my overalls and work on this one.
Yeah.
You know, and that's how it actually grew.
I don't mind working 24/7. I enjoy it. Just
I
have to sleep and eat and also spend time with the family. But the rest of the time, what else is there except work?
I did it for my employer in the first place. Then I thought, you know what, I can do it for myself.
Yeah.
Because I just, because of the passion of succeeding, I would let the kids go to bed and continue working.
Yes. Well, keeping your finger on the pulse, that's the next point. It actually is the final point you want to discuss. You say at all times, make sure you keep your finger, start the journey and keep your finger on the pulse throughout.
Yes. The challenge with running a business is it's like conceiving a baby. You don't just start it and then run it anyhow. You have to make sure that you are keeping up with the market trends. You are keeping up with its growth internally. You are keeping up with...
babysit the business.
Yes, you have to babysit it until it is fully grown and continue doing so. Because what people tend to do is, especially in the construction sector where I come from, sometimes you strike a gold mine, right? With government down payments and all this. 10 million pull-up project, the government gives you 10%
mobilization
advance payment, right? Geez, that's $1 million, right? And what do? Instead of focusing on what can be done with that million to enhance your project success so that you can get your 1.5 if you have a 15% margin, that money goes into a farm because that's really your passion. It's your passion is not construction, it's farming. So you take that money and you put it in the farm. When you come back, the baby is dead.
It's true that. Okay, this is the time of our conversation when you get to ask me any questions, Mr. Mpulubusi. You can shoot.
What can I say? I'm actually curious. I've known your name and your law firm's name for many years. But I now realize that you are into real estate. And I am almost tempted to believe that because of your age, you may have grown up just ahead of me and in an era that had more difficulty than a good life. And I'm just wondering how you personally made it to where you are.
Okay, I consider myself relatively young in business. I mean, when I grew up, Red Dada were there, established Borre Muni were there, and Borre Mpuchani were ahead of us. So these people I call, one of them is my mentor, Mr. Muni. Others were my distant mentors in the sense that I looked up to them. The Borre Mahang.
Yes.
So I had a fallback position, which was my religious faith, which was very important for me. I'm a practicing Seventh-day Adventist. In addition to that, I had these mentorship opportunities with these various people, some of whom were my clients. So I think interacting with them, learning from them, spending time with them really helped me in giving me guidance, in reinforcing some of the ideas that I had, and in developing the resilience because the most important thing is resilience, and getting comfortable with failure, and accepting that it's important to have more. In order to have success, you have to have a series of failures. I've had a lot of failures. For instance, here in Mogobe Plaza, I failed in the sense that I could not keep the lease for the government to occupy the building for reasons which were political or whatever. But my point is this, that's a huge failure, but I'm not allowing it to eat me. I'm moving on.
That's right.
We have series of failures. Sometimes I jokingly call them right hooks and uppercuts in a boxing lingo. But I say, look, as long as you get up before the count is out, you can get that right hook, but make sure you get up so that you can fight another day and get to the 12 round.
Yes.
You enhance the prospects of winning. So that in a nutshell is the key to what I believe got us where we are.
Okay. Thank you.
I've answered your question?
Somewhat, yes.
Oh, you're not happy? You can answer a follow-up. You can ask a follow-up question.
You see, when I graduated from university, for example, in fact, right from when I was in junior school, the government had already taken over the educating of kids, right? So I had free education by the government from Form 1 up to university, more or less. But during your time, I have a feeling that, I know just before your time, we started paying 2 pula at school and stuff.
Yeah.
And generally, parents could not afford that. Because even 2 pula at the time I'm talking about was a sizable amount of money. So I'm just wondering how you managed to
during my
navigate.
time, the government did provide sponsorship, free education. The early days, I know that my parents were struggling. I think they were paying. But I think around the 80s, the government started offering free education. And it really helped. But the kind of education they offered is that you went to Tswana medium. It's not the type of education now we are giving to our children. So the Tswana mediums were good because we liked to boast. We like to boast how we are beating the English medium guys in terms of football, in terms of sports, also in terms of academics
also.
Yes, especially academics. So it was a source of pride to see how we could hammer them after so much money had been spent on them. So GSS kids were quite happy to beat the Maruapula kids. And that went on even when we went to university. So I think that's that.
Okay.
Mr. Mpulubusi, please tell the audience, that's your camera, tell the listeners, leave them with one overarching message of how they can enhance their prospects of success when they start a business. I think that's the takeaway message that I want you to give them.
If you really want to succeed, remember, your passion is your only driver. If you do something that you do not love doing, even if you succeed, you will probably still feel that you failed, because the pleasure of succeeding in that endeavor will never get to the bottom of your heart. You have to do something that you love, because the difficulties that come with starting a business are real. And if you are looking for the money only, you will not make it for sure. The choices I've mentioned earlier are important, but they are probably not the only ones. You need to look at your market or the business you want to start and decide what are the critical success factors in this business I want to start. They are not going to start sticking to your business after you start it. They have to be predetermined. And as I always say to people, failure can be predetermined. The sluggers do it all the time. Thank you.
We appreciate that. Thank you so much for sharing your your time with us, your expertise with us, your experiential knowledge with us. That's what we are about here at Mogobe, Nuggets of Wisdom. Would you like to tell us your contact details, share them with the viewer, how they can reach you, where you're available online, and so on?
Yes, my email address, aljah, ALJAH, @pws.co.bw. Our website, www.pws.co.bw. That's where you find Pipework Services. My cell number, 7220-4235. It is the only number. WhatsApp or any other of these electronic media, I only use one. We are at plot 10228 Maporoporo Road, where there used to be Aluminium 2000, just opposite Commercial Motors, or Honda, as they normally call it.
Thank you very much. Would you like to encourage them to subscribe to Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom?
I would actually recommend that, because I have watched quite a few of the Nuggets of Wisdom, and they have proven quite valuable. I think it's a program that one should follow, and because it is also homegrown, the likelihood is that the experiences from people talking is not just a video on social media. It is actually real life experiences of the soil you walk on every day, of the buildings you enter every day, and the people you meet every day. No disrespect, a lot of what we are taught in books and stuff is from markets which are either too advanced for ours or too far away to our culture. So this is a really great homegrown program which wisdom can be derived from to succeed in the market where it is actually being produced.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So well put. Thank you very much. Thank you. We recognize you, what you're doing at Pipework Services, what you've done, also the information you are sharing on this platform, on Meet the Overcomers and other platforms, and the mentoring. We really appreciate you, Mr. Mpulubusi. Keep up the good work.
Thank you very much. My
Thanks.
pleasure here. Thanks for having me. I know there is a lot of people who could have been here, but for whatever reason you chose me today.
Thank you.
I really appreciate that.
Thank you very much.